All right, the panel is now officially beginning. Yay! Welcome, students. My name is Kyla Feisner, Professor of Warfare Arts at Dragoncon Academy. Is my volume loud enough for all of you to hear?
No. A little louder possible.
All right, wait. You're good. Grab it close here. There we go. Good. I'm going to simply hold it. And now, perhaps you can understand the dilemma I faced during my last season at this institution when I was hired to tutor a group of cool, promising young kids, only to discover that in reality I had been conscripted against my knowledge into a series of events filled with intrigue, bloodshed, conspiracy, and overall just really bad vibes. Alas, I had some suspicions of these up-and-coming young leaders from the start. I could not use my charge of their house to steer them onto a path of righteousness. I was simply filled by an inevitable cataclysm of disaster after disaster after disaster. However, I wish to redeem myself. I simply have one question. Having experienced every possible timeline, I've narrowed down the possibilities, I've done my research, and I must find the answer to it so I can soundly sleep at night. Who do I side with so I can be involved in the fewest war crime? I was never a religious person. I was a mercenary, in fact, and very much not concerned with whether or not there was a fate awaiting my mortal soul. But then I met literally God, and that has me questioning a few things. To be fair, she is often the one telling me to do the murder thing, but the existence of any God, period, is enough to get a girl thinking. Now, I've accepted the fact that whoever I side with, I'm going to have to do some bad things to help them win. But how can I, as someone who has only ever studied battle, determine the morally best route forward? Obviously, with the help of some conventions. Namely, the Hague Conventions, negotiated at the first and second conferences in The Hague, Netherlands in 1899 and 1907 respectively, two of the first formal statements of laws of war and war crimes in the nascent body of international secular law. The Geneva Conventions, adopted and continuously expanded from 1864 to 1949 with 3 additional protocols added in 1977 and 2005, and now the Dragon Convention, also generously decided to take part in which I honestly believe may be the most applicable to my current situation, given that this is something that I have to deal with regularly. Now, before we begin, I do have a little bit of housekeeping, some important information to go over. First, this is not an event which will involve audience participation unless it is explicitly called for. If you have a question, there will be time after the event is complete. And please keep any responses exclusive to when I ask you guys to yell out responses. Second, due to the nature of the investigation we are conducting, I will be revealing important information from every potential timeline that has previously occurred in my life or will potentially occur in my life. If you do not wish to learn this information, you should leave lest your experience today be spoiled. Third, although we will be discussing some pretty heinous and serious topics, my intent is to keep this a lighthearted event. If you do not wish to see, human disasters discussed as a topic of frivolous entertainment, I'd recommend leaving, and I would not hold it against you. Please note that I will only be discussing events and crimes that have occurred in my world, a world which I've heard some of you call fictional. There will be nothing from your world involved in this panel aside from legal code. And finally, if you wish to make any posts or commentary about this event, you can do so on the social media of your choice by using the hashtag #CatsAnimePanel. I do not know who Kat is, but I am certain that she is probably extremely cool and sexy and makes great baked goods. I just get that vibe. Now, all that being said, what is a war crime? Well, it's a crime you do in war. Probably could have figured that one out on your own. Also, by the way, just to give a preemptive answer to your inevitable question, my students are not child soldiers. Did you know that you're technically only a child soldier if you're under the age of 15? Now you do. 15-year-olds in the audience, find a country that will take you, and you can go do war legally according to the United Nations. It's fine. Anyway, I will be calculating a war crime total for every student in the and a house crime total for each group of students I have the option to teach. This one war crime will be worth 10 points. Why 10 points, do you ask? Well, because not all crimes are war crimes. Crimes not committed during war are still like bad things to do. These crimes will be worth 5 points. However, after much consideration, deliberation, I have decided to introduce a third category into the mix as well. Actions which are universally considered frowned upon are maybe not crimes in a legal sense, but like they're not good. I think they are also important for my heavenly moral consideration and will be weighted at 1 point. Now, obviously, each house should be wanting to get not the highest, but the lowest score possible in this game. This is because the closest game we have to a real-life war crime is golf. Mostly because it makes my math way easier. Also, please note, I am not going to be subtracting points because the students do good or noble things. You don't get a murder sentence reduced because you delivered a baby afterwards, and I intend to apply that same logic today. Now that we figured out our logistics, I would love to begin by discussing some unfortunate war crimes that I believe nearly every one of my students has participated in. Targeting healers in battle. And I quote, members of the armed forces specially trained for employment as hospital orderlies, nurses, or auxiliary stretcher bearers shall be respected and protected if they are carrying out these duties at the time when they come into contact with the enemy. All right, first of all, whoops. What else are you supposed to do when the mission says rout the enemy? Who knows? But that gets everybody else. Oh, no! Unfortunately, when you consider all timelines, everyone at some point also targets our beloved institution of Dragoncon Academy. And as we all know, in sieges and bombardments, all necessary steps must be taken to spare, as far as possible, buildings dedicated to religion, art, science, or charitable purposes, as well as historic monuments. Now, there is one caveat here, which is the rest of that sentence, which continues, provided they are not being used at the time for military purposes. Okay, so the thing about that is, even if soldiers were living in, say, the Vatican, where there is a real pope and not a dragon pope, I still think it'd be very not cool to bomb the Vatican. Nonetheless, the only people who consistently attack Dragoncon during peacetime, before the war begins, are the Black Eagles in every timeline. Yeah, screw Dragon Pope. So Black Eagles, they're all going to get 10 points each here, and I'm going to call it a normal crime for everybody else, just because, like, it's not quite kosher, you know? Next up, we got the Rome Statute, Article 8, Part 17, prohibiting poisonous weapons. Fairly straightforward. Unfortunately, we have 4 of those. The venom edge, the venom lance, the venom axe, and the venom bow. Now, pretty much anyone can use these weapons if they are so inclined, but to give as many people as I can the benefit of the doubt, I am only going to add war crime points to people who have proficiency in swords, axes, bows, or, let's see, what's that last one? Yeah, lances. Man, screw lances, right? That would mean that everybody else who's not proficient in those weapons could probably reasonably avoid them. There's a lot of people, though. A lot of people are proficient in things that are pointy. No poison other stuff. Turns out that Article 8, Part 17 has a sequel. Guess what it's called? Article 8, Part 18, which condemns the use of asphyxiating, poisonous, or other gases and all analogous liquids. This pretty clearly covers the miasma spell, which literally conjures a cloud of poisonous gas. And I'm going to say I'm pretty sure also that the all analogous liquids phrasing means that mire as a spell is out of the question as well, since that's the thing that makes little like goo bubble up and get on you and do damage. I don't know how they do that. I think it's kind of freaky. So anyone who can learn either of these spells gets 10 war crime points. Sorry, taking items. Alright, so raise your hand if you've ever looted a corpse. See, everyone does it from time to time. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I thought this was kind of fine. But it turns out that a lot of international legal documents say that you cannot destroy or seize an enemy's property unless necessitated by the obligations of war. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I tear open a treasure chest and it's full of stuff that's not particularly useful to me. Just go sell that stuff at the merchant. I never use about half the stuff I find in treasure chests. And And I know that when I take it too, honestly, going for 100% completion out there, am I right? It just feels good to take everything, but alas, I've done it, and they've all done it, so that's 10 more points for everyone. Alright, I'm going to introduce a little mini-game element here, so get ready to yell out some answers. Now that we're getting into the swing of things, I'm going to show you some weapons and spells, and you're all going to tell me at once, use your voices in unison, whether you think the use of them would be a war crime, illegal, a current crime under the law of the state this convention is being held at, or just, it's fine. It's fine to have this. First off, the Levin Sword, a legendary magic weapon with a jagged edge that can gather and redirect lightning from the sky for a critical hit. On the count of 3, tell me your thoughts. 1, 2, 3. It is, in fact, a crime! Well, there are no regulations against the use of weapons shaped like or capable of that similar amount of damage. The main problem with the Levin Sword is its functionality as a lightning rod, which makes its usage illegal when not installed by a trained electrician. More importantly, a sword carried by hand around the battlefield does not feature multiple grounding wires installed in safe inert areas away from watersheds. It's something I overlooked. I don't know how I could implement this, but we'll figure it out later. Anyway, assign 5 crime points to anyone doing battle with straight swords who's likely to use the Levin Sword in combat. Next up, we have the Dragoncon, multi-bladed brawler weapons used to punch your enemies into submission with the strength of a dragon. On the count of 3, yell it out. 1, 2, 3. This is there's no international regulations against comparable weapons in warfare, and the state of Georgia considers knuckle dusters and blades to both be less lethal, weird category weapons that are legal for anyone to own without a license. You can go get yourself some Dragoncon. Alright, flash fire arrows. That is a gambit attack that fires a volley of arrows which ignite and explode upon impact. They affect 4 spaces in front of them in a straight line, and they also hit flying enemies. Count of 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Alright. Most of you had the right idea. Clearly you've read the 1868 St. Petersburg Declaration, which specifically prohibits the use of any projectile of a weight below 400 grams, which is either explosive or charged with fulminating or flammable substances. A sentiment echoed later on, additionally, in the Geneva Convention. This is a few hundred exploding arrows that each weigh below 400 grams. Luckily for them, I'm not going to count it individually, but since this gambit is used by multiple factions, I'm giving war crime points to the characters the factions are most explicitly associated with and likely to be commanded by based on their national leadership. Thus, the Alliance Master Archers implicate Claude and Lawrence, the Edmund Troops implicate Marianne, and the Empire Snipers implicate Abelgard and Ferdinand. Next up is Hades, a spell that instantly calls up some weird magic stuff to functionally vaporize the enemy in front of you. I'm including it here because her fans usually colloquially refer to this attack as Lysipia's nuke. Anyway, on the count of 3, say your thoughts. 1, 2, 3. There's actually no regulation about the usage of nuclear weapons in war, provided they are used on enemy targets and deemed necessary for warfare. This is an unofficial, the only kind of like universal unofficial agreement that we all have that prevents the usage of nuclear weapons. It's not any kind of legal language specific law or treaty, but it is the ever-looming threat of MAD, aka mutually assured destruction. The guy who triggers the apocalypse. Now, I could go on all day breaking down every single individual spell and weapon like this, but I would like to speed things ahead by breaking everything down per student. House leaders will be considered at the end, and when a crime or a war crime was committed on orders or plans laid out by the house leader or under their direct supervision, the house leader will be the one responsible for that action, unless the student was like super psyched about it. First off, we have Hilda, current crime points 35. Alright, so the main point point of interest here is Hilda's paralogue battle, where she's called by her brother to help defend their territory against the Elmyran attack, blah, 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 all good so far. But by inviting along Cyril, a boy under the age of 15, originally from the Elmyran territory, she violates Article 50, which states that an occupying power may not enlist children in formations or organizations subordinate to it. War crime. Additionally, Cyril's dialogue says, and I quote, "Before Lady Rhea took me in, I had a real hard time as a servant of House Goneril. As an individual involved in the governance of House Goneril, Hilda would have been, like, at best, a mandated reporter to make authorities aware of abusive circumstances a child is in, and at worst, a perpetuator of it. Crime. Later, when we begin our assault on Fort Mercius, which, believe me, we're gonna get back to later, Hilda is the one who puts forth the plan to emulate the uniforms of the enemy to sneak into the fort in a more effective manner, thus committing the crime of perfidy, which, again, more details later, but the important thing to know right now, war crime. New total, 60 points. Alright, Petra. Petra's mostly clean, but alas, the default character with authority over Bridget hunters whose gambit attack involved rolling out a barrel full of poison into the enemy and detonating it, thereby once more violating regulations against poison with a different attack, is a war crime. 10 more points. Woo! Felix currently sits at 40 crime points. All major like weapons, regulations, he fights like, above board, knows how to sword, etc. His sea support with Ingrid reveals that at a previous time in battle, he, quote, did all he could to disrupt things, brazenly rambling on about clear-cutting a nearby forest to secure a matching route. Now, obviously, this violates Article 35 of the Additional Protocol 1 of the Geneva Convention, which states methods or means of warfare which are intended or may be expected to cause widespread, long-term, and severe damage to the natural environment are prohibited. War crime, 10 points. He's also a jerk, so we're giving him a round of applause. Alright, crime points, 51. Ignat! No lie, I forget this guy existed every time. Try as I might, I could not find any additional crimes to hold him accountable for. Believe me, I wish I could. Auntie Dorothea. She's an overall stand-up gal, but alas, her spell Meteor can, I believe, be called an indiscriminate weapon due to the fact that it affects all areas of land that were not explicitly targeted by the attack, and is a literal meteor strike being called down from the heavens. As we all know, everyone say it with me, employing weapons, projectiles, and materials and methods of warfare which are of a nature to cause superfluous injury or which are inherently indiscriminate are in violation of the international law of armed conflict. So that's 10 war crime points. Sweet Ash, my perfect son boy who has never done anything wrong in his life besides the 35 crime points he has already Honestly, I wish I could just ignore these, but alas, theft is a definite crime pretty much everywhere, even if for a sympathetic reason in the backstory. And eavesdropping, as he did on my conversation with Catherine in their paralogue, is generally frowned upon. So, crime! Oh my god, I'm just not realizing we're not even a third of the way through. We gotta speed up these kids bullet point style, so I'm going to ramp this up. Ferdinand kills civilians riding for a pretty justified reason in his paralogue, not entirely forbidden since they were violently targeting his troops first, but there's a case to be made for excessive force, so I'm going to call it crime. Raphael is associated with the Leicester mercenaries whose indiscriminate incendiary gambit Blaze is a war crime, and he keeps stealing my dinner, which is frowned upon. Sylvain has copious French behavior, and when his father asks him to dispose of bandits in a paralogue, he specifically says, come on, we gotta block off their escape routes. No quarter hog violation, war crime. Bernadetta, according to the authority of Ferdinand and some internal academy dialogue, is up to some weird stuff. But none of that stuff is crime. 2 frowned upon points. Lysithia could technically be considered a strangely shaped bullet which violates Article 8. So that's another war crime spell. Mercedes' most time-related outfit is a nun's garb, which means she is technically impersonating the uniform of a protected class of persons, while nevertheless engaging in combat. War crime. Casper actively relishes getting into fights and battles, an emotion which can count as a war crime if it escalates to the point of, quote, willful killing. But since I don't fully know what's going on inside that boy's head, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and simply call it frowned upon. It would be cool if it were a war crime. It's not. But alas, certainly frowned upon within polite society. Marianne, you're such a sweetie pie. You're doing your best. And Marianne, if you're out there, don't let anything I say discourage you from living your best life. Go, go, girl, gaslight, girl boss, gatekeep, etc. But also, Marianne is complicit in the crime of bribery, as Hanneman's support reveals her father sent a very large donation with her to the academy for her to, not have her test crested while being taken to the academy. Theft as well, as if she's defeated during the academy phase of the timeline, she will take a horse and never be seen again. I don't know if y'all know this, but horses, they're expensive. There's a reason why horse girls are the demographic horse girls tend to be. They got that old money there. Anyway, her battalion, the Emblem troops, which are strongly associated with her, we talked about one attack, but they had another war crime, the attack. Oh yeah, actually, no, I messed up there. We did count that one earlier. We counted it earlier, so that's fine. I'm just going to add her normal crimes. Linhardt is known to trespass into forbidden areas, a crime, and is unfortunately associated with the Empire Magic Corps, who use a very war crime group claims attack, and the Sub and Militia, who use a poison attack. That's bad. I am not, in fact, going to count his sleepiness, laziness, overall terrible attitude as part of a crime or even frowned upon, because I did go to sleep for 5 years. I am not in a place to judge it. Annette is a sweet girl who is sadly associated with the School of Sorcery Soldiers Battalion, who use the very war crime Resonant Flames Gambit, and although it is no longer a valid legal code on the art of war, I did find some documentation from the government of Constantinople, the Roman capital, circa 1100, stating that it is forbidden by law for bakers to enlist in the army. Annette sure does bake. I don't think we can call it a war crime anymore, but I'm willing to throw it up there as a frowned upon. If you're ever in danger of getting drafted, get really, really into making croissants. Incite this, see if it can protect you. Leonie is associated with the same war crime militia as Linhardt, and although I can't fairly call it a war crime, and honestly, I'll admit I can't even call it a crime, she has a crush on my dad, and that's frowned upon by me. So I'm at least putting it down there. Hubert has some problems. He's a generally disagreeable gentleman, but I wouldn't even necessarily call that frowned upon, because I'm sure that many of us are, at least in our hearts when other people are speaking, disagreeable gentlemen. We can sympathize. However, he does use dark spikes, something we previously went over with Lysithia. He knowingly allies himself with entities with genocidal goals, aka those who slither, and his whole, we have to work together with them until we get the chance to betray them excuse doesn't really cut it, because imagine saying that in real life. I knew this guy was going to commit a murder, but I had to pretend I was also going to commit a murder the whole time, so I could do my own better murder in the near future of the good kind of murder. No, that Hubert, no. Anyway, he also is someone who knows from very, very early on the true nature of the hero's relics, as, corpses from an ancient giant deity dragon who he is in personal direct conflict with. This means he is knowingly participating in the defilement of an enemy corpse. Also a war crime. This one, there's a little to throw in there. It's just a crime. It's just a crime, it's not that bad. But he does threaten to kill me at our first support. And also our second support. And also our third support. And the next time he asks me to marry him, so there's a jump there. There's a leap. I'm just gonna call it a crime for now, though. Alright. So the thing with to do, sure, yeah, he technically already has 35 crime points coming into this, but he also has a certain legal status shared by no other character among my students. His situation as a survivor of genocide fleeing into the country that killed his people, achieving a protected status that may nonetheless be at risk at any time should he violate the norms of this new society he has entered and sought asylum in, means that his situation is in fact governed by the 1951 Refugee Convention and its associated protocols. In addition to his safety in Vargas being like guaranteed, but also contingent upon following orders and not breaking rank or being perceived to break rank by any member of the government, aka anyone he lives with because he lives in the castle of Dimitri, it stands that all of Dedue's acts, all of his actions since entering Vargas, have basically been out of the necessity of self-preservation as a victim of his circumstance, clearing him of all functional legal culpability. In other words, they did. Zero crime points. I am wiping them all from the board. That is a flawless man whom I will protect to the ends of the earth. Now, before we move on to the house leaders, I'd like to take a quick minute to check the standings we have so far. We currently have Hubert in the lead by numerically the equivalent of 2.5 full war crimes, followed by Ferdinand, Marianne, and Hilda. They're all in kind of the hot water of 60 crime points. In the bottom, either, unsurprisingly, if you have faith in the institution of religion, or disappointingly, if you're looking for an excuse to tear down the church, the literal non-Mercedes with the lowest war crime count of anyone not completely absolved of sin or external law circumstances. Now, there's clearly a direction things are shaping up right now, but we don't know what'll happen. House leaders get up to some nonsense all collectively, like, we've heard these rants, like, you always think to yourself, okay, yeah, sure, they're the villain on this route where they're the enemy I'm fighting. In this timeline, I choose to side with Dimitri, so of course Edelgard is going to be evil. Here I decided, I'm going to side with Edelgard this time, of course. Everybody else is going to look worse, right? But no, like, on their own routes, they're all still terrible. Like, Dimitri, my boy, my sweet, sweet spaghetti boy, I want to support you, I'm trying to help you, but you keep flying into a blood rage even when I'm being nice. I invite you to tea every Wednesday morning. It is chamomile. Chamomile is calming and soothing. It is sleepy time tea, and yet you're like this. Alas, it is time for the big three. Now, right off the bat, I do feel a little bad about this one now that I know. According to the Geneva Convention, all three house leaders have committed a war crime by hiring me and my dad. When we first encountered them in the woods, we were mercenaries, very much by this definition. Like you see there, we are specially recruited locally or abroad. We were recruited locally from abroad, so yeah, definitely in that. Motivated to take part in the hostility, essentially by desire for private gain. They did immediately tell me that they were royalty being chased by bandits and that I had the opportunity to help them. I will confess I made some leaps of logic there in cause and effect of what I might gain from this circumstance. Is neither a national of a party to the conflict nor a resident of territory. I don't know where I'm from. I'm not a resident of any of their territories. I wasn't involved, and yet they drug me down to their level anyway. Alas, that means that this is considered an act of war because they are heads of state, and any act upon them counts as an act of war, so the defense of them against that kind of conflict does as well. Anyway, looking at this whole list of mercenary definitions, I gotta say, yep, that me? My bad, I guess? But I'm still gonna say it's on them! Alright, so we've talked a lot about other students, all of these various, war crime gambits. All of these battalions are only recruitable if you're working with one of these three house leaders. And all of them use attacks that are either poison-based, indiscriminate land destruction-based, or feature again, those exploding projectiles under 500 grams each. Add that all together, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's math. Counting is math. Edelgard gets 8 war crime battalions. Claude gets 5 war crime battalions. And surprisingly, 0 war crime battalions. Turns out that the thing with weapons, that's fine. That's literally what war is. Everything they're doing is okay. Good for them, I guess. Shrug. Alright, now it's time to move on to our boy, Claude Von Regan. Let's do a deep dive for a bit. Now, Claude's great. Claude wants to end racism. We all love Claude. But Claude still got up to a lot of shenanigans. In a paralogue, he reveals that he has a poison collection and has practiced making a few of his own. That is technically not a war crime because he does not use them. We never see Claude use those specific poisons directly. But I'm still going to say, it's not even a crime in Georgia. Specifically in Georgia, he could be using them to poison all of the rats, maybe. We don't know that. It's plausible deniability. I'm going to say it's frowned upon, though. Like, you go into your friend's college dorm, and he's sitting there, mixing up some anthrax and full PPE. You're going to be like, it's not illegal. But, calm down, Walter White. Anyway, I was featured in Article 23 of the Hog Regulations and previously alluded to in the Hilt section. Claude also makes use of a military insignia and uniform of the enemy to infiltrate Fort Mercius, committing perfidy and thus breaking the law of honest conduct during war. Perfidy is a very fun word that basically means any circumstance in warfare where you are pretending to be a person you aren't, or pretending to be in a situation that is not actually your current situation. Such as falsely surrendering and then deciding that, surprise, I wasn't surrendering, I had 6 more swords under my cape the entire time. That's perfidy. And perfidy is also, it's just me, a wandering, lonely priest. Please let me into your chapel that I will definitely not explode with devil magic. Also perfidy. The kinds of false circumstances, false impersonation, etc. Anyway, Claude also did a little bit of priming by that one fire trap. When the enemy was approaching Dragoncon, we did set a lot of bombs in the forest that could be triggered, which did indiscriminately explode a lot of people, and probably, there were civilians in that area. We don't know for sure, but there were definitely people walking around when I checked the day before who didn't leave. And fail not. I mentioned fail not because, again, I'm ding Hubert for the crimes against a corpse. I have to fairly ding Claude for the same thing, even though he's much more charismatic about it. But he did have an inkling the entire time of exactly what his holy relic was made of. I would make eye contact with Edelgard the entire time I played abilities, but also I'm scared, so I'm not going to. Alright, first off we have initiating conflict with no sign of existential threat. That would be the initial onslaught on Dragoncon. I've already counted it as a war crime previously due to the fact that it is a religious, arts, science, and cultural institution, but this, although it is the same attack, is technically doing a different crime, so it's on the board again. Attacks on neutral states, that would be the Empire's invasion of the Neutral Alliance after the war has broken out and before we reach, final battles and territory when I'm siding with anyone else but Claude, the mistreatment of prisoners of war. Now we can delve into this one a little bit, because there's 2 confirmed prisoners of war that existed under Edelgard's jurisdiction, those being Rhea and Dimitri. We don't know a ton about what went wrong with Rhea. Dimitri, however, only has an eye patch in the routes where he was under the Empire's custody. In the route where he never went into custody, he's fine. He has binocular vision. And it turns out that there is actually a very specific set of statutes that displays what level of injuries on a POW can be considered, stuff that happens when you're in prison, just gross, versus stuff that probably means a war crime or torture was committed. And one of those is explicitly injuries to eyes, or injuries that cause the ceasing of function of any singular organ, which an eye is. So alas, confirmed war crime. Also, now Edelgard, I do have a question directly for you right now. And that is, in your POW holding camps, is there a place where they can purchase cigarettes and alcohol? Only you know the answer to this, Edelgard. Can they purchase or otherwise gain cigarettes or alcohol in any way, shape, or form?
Sure.
Okay, that's not a war crime. I won't add it. Thank you. Forbidding people from medication that they are dependent upon is a war crime, and it does specifically say in the Geneva Convention, if someone is dependent upon cigarettes and asks for cigarettes and is a prisoner of war, you have to give them cigarettes. So I'm glad to know that the laws of working retail in the United States also apply to being a prisoner of war in a fantasy world. Let's see. Biological experiments on unwilling human subjects. Lots of science being done with crest stones and making people into, like the big hulking stompy beast was done when Edelgard and Hubert and company were still working with those that slither. And also, when Edelgard turns into the big, weird tree at the end of that one storyline, I don't know what level of willing is happening there and what happened to everybody else who also turned into a big scary monster on the same battlefield. I think that falls under that. Attempted genocide of the Nabateans being all of our little half-dragon, half-god, green-haired, immortal friends who are technically the only people of their race that exist in this world, and who I definitely saw Edelgard trying to murder all of when I decided with her. Compelling a protected person, prisoner of war, or foreign dignitary to serve in the forces of hostile power. Well, what is that? You say, who is that? Technically, that's Petra. Because Petra is from a foreign country who it says specifically in the text is living in Garrigmok as a sign of peace, as a sign of guaranteeing the treaty and ensured cooperation between Brigid and the Empire. She even talks frequently about how she feels like she has to keep her grades up, keep her studies up, etc., because failure to do so could, threaten the peace between their two nations. So obviously when that nation goes to war, that's a pretty strong compilation to fight. War crime, spies, soldiers disguised as protected persons. There was, just gonna say, a lot of people in Garrigmok dressed up as priests and travelers who entered, and then suddenly had, in the Empire, a suspicious amount of information about our internal goings-on. That is the context in which they were able to enter. No quarter given. That counts for, basically, a little add-on charge. No quarter given is like the you didn't buckle your seatbelt when you were drunk driving of war crimes charges. Because, if you're abusing your prisoners of war, you're not giving them quarter. You're not giving them just treatment. It's already there. But hey, it's another bullet point in the convention. I'm going to count it as its own thing. And also, sending soldiers to known suicide missions against the laws of war and conduct. I am counting this as when she explicitly ordered, hey, Bernadetta, you know what sounds like a fun time right now, Bernadetta? Running up that hill. Everybody loves running up that hill. Go run up that hill, Bernadetta. And then setting the hill on fire. That wasn't very cool, Edelgard. I'm sorry. No, Bernie and I don't talk that much, but that really wasn't cool. Our stinky ratman Dimitri! Willful killing. He's very excited about it. I try to give everyone best as I can the benefit of the doubt. Some people approach things from a neurodivergent perspective, have their own special interests. That excitement is justified. That excitement is not justified, but the special interest is murder. It just is. I admire his dedication to a singular category of actions, his knowledge and the ability to act upon his intents. I'm being as nice as I can. Dimitri, stop killing every last one of them. No quarter given, because again, I reiterate, he is killing every last one of them. But that is your stated mission. I don't think you are accepting conditional or unconditional surrenders. We tried. I'm not faster than a lance. Let's see, mistreatment of prisoners of war. We did manage to get a prisoner of war from the Empire side when I was working with the Blue Lions, at which point Dimitri started interrogating him. I use interrogating loosely because I don't think he was actually asking him any questions. I think he was just about to end this man's whole career. I did step in before anything severe could happen, but regardless, no, the intent is there. I'm gonna count it, as well as killing civilians. Now, he does say he did. We don't see it, but like, if nothing else, I trust him on this. He can have visions about other stuff, but this seems kind of in character. The other element of it is he does mention when he was in the custody of the Empire, having to kill government officials on his way out, making his escape. Government officials are defined as civilians, as they are not direct parties to war and conflict unless they start defending themselves. Now let's look at again, divide by 10 to get an accurate war crime or war crime equivalent number. And, you know, there's some interesting patterns here. I gotta say, the dude's really bringing down that Blue Lion's average. Good for him. He ends up pulling a good one. Always got his friends' backs. Edelgard. We should probably have some words. Let's see, other notable highlights. Klon. You know, Klon, everyone wants to be his friend. Great stand-up guy. That's a lot more than I expected to come to this. Very unfortunate. Anyway, I wanted to do just, you know, it's hard to add numbers together in your head looking at data displayed like this, so I want to provide you another view of them all together, and, now, one thing I will say is that the Black Eagles are not twice as bad as the Blue Lions. They're getting there. However, it's a bit forward of me to say that any house is like bad, good, etc. in comparison with any of the other houses, because I want to consider like weighted morality, personal morality. These numbers might seem pretty revealing, but like lots of absolutists, lots of utilitarians out there would argue that you gotta consider the scale of things, you gotta consider the context of things. Like, what are people's actions? What are people's intents? Because obviously, like, your intent doesn't matter in the fact of whether you hurt someone or not. But like, there's a difference between, oh no, you broke my aunt's prized Victorian vase. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it on purpose, I'll buy you a new one. Versus, oh no, you broke my aunt's prized Victorian vase. Yes, it's because I hate you and your aunt. There's considerations to take in mind. Dimitri might have done the least crime numerically, but he enjoyed it the most. I feel like that's really important to consider in these circumstances. Whereas Edelgard, for all of her everything, thought she was doing the right thing the whole time. The goal was to prevent greater suffering and to tear down a genuinely very unfair system of government. Let's be real here. Any context in which Fargans look like they're healthy and have good laws is a bad context. It's a poor system. Maybe taking over all of their lands by force is also indicative of a poor system. But you know what? I didn't study government. I studied smashing things with hammers. Thus, I want to give that decision a little bit more over to you. Claude's just doing his best. But no matter how I might have crunched these numbers, I still want you all to consider your personal morality when passing judgment on who is the worst war criminal. On the count of 3, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, go style, like we did previously, I want you all to yell the name of the person who you think is the worst person. Okay? Are you ready, everybody? That is 1, 2, 3.
Violence!
Did someone say violence? I heard a couple of people say violence. Wait. Oh no. Hold on. Okay. I'm gonna do some Googling. I'm literally gonna do some Googling. Okay, Command responsibility, also called superior responsibility, the Yamashita standard and the Medina standard, is the legal doctrine of hierarchy, accountability for war crimes. At its core, the doctrine stipulates that a superior, defined as a military commander or a civilian leader, can be held responsible for war crimes committed by subordinates. So that means, give me a moment, hold on. There's something I gotta do here. Right click, give me one.
So two minor points of contention in regards. Does Edelgard specifically have intentions of exterminating the Nabitans and Jealous on the planet? Because she happily left Flame instead of basically leave with her life intact after they give up and go to the match. She leaves them alone. She just wants them out of position.
She does, but it is expressed verbally in previous points.
Okay, and then the second one is only is it explicitly proven that Dimitri loses his eye while in captivity or as a result of the previous battle, and also wasn't he held by the Corvus Dukedom, which while technically a puppet of the Empire.
It is not, but it was a puppet of the Empire, and again, I'm using that contingent upon the, has stereoscopic vision still in the red round. Yes?
Just two questions. Have you considered adding either the Church or the Free Hopes version of events to this?
The answer was this was going to be a 2-hour panel if I added the Church. I already had one panel that I rehearsed earlier, which was my anime fashion one. I rehearsed that one last night. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes, so I said, oh no. And as I was outlining this one, I had a similar issue. I was like, it's just the kids. It's just the kids. I'm violent. It's only them. I will die otherwise.
Are there any notable war crimes that come in when you consider violence beyond old incidents who are all in them aware?
There are, actually, there's a couple of things I would like to point out now that we're in the out-of-character portion, and I'm surprised I was Kat. Now that it's me, and that is due to the Ashen Wolves being DLC characters who not everybody has played through their various paths and routes. And same thing with the new game with Free Hope, or Free Heroes, Hope's Heroes, the new guys. The new guy, the one with Shez. Once again, that's a relatively new game and not a lot of people have played through all of it, so I just wasn't including this. There's a couple of characters that actually only have additional crimes and war crimes that come up in Free Hopes. Petra's one of them, interestingly enough. Petra does, in one of the paralogs in the new game, directly say that she intended to kill Casper's uncle if she ever saw him. And that is resolved, so I would have considered that. And there's other, that's the one that came right, but there's other little things like that were not included just because of fewer people have experienced. Yes, the Misato, I love your cosplay, best girl!
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can we add a point to Dimitri for being generally unhygienic during That's really frowned upon.
Well, add a point to Dimitri, but I will go as far as to say that that's not my fault, so it doesn't add a point to me. Yes.
Thoughts on Hubert and Patricide?
Ooh, Hubert and Patricide. Yeah, I could probably count that one. I think that can be both a crime and also frowned upon. And arguably, if we ascribe to the notion of Buddhism, killing your father is one of the ultimate great sins there. So it's a war crime if you're Buddhist, maybe. Yes.
I guess the question is, should we? Because it sounds like his dad was an asshole.
That is fair and could be justified. There's a debate to be had back and forth. We'll ask him later. Yes.
I was gonna ask because I love Dimitri. He's my best boy. But
here's the confession from Kat. Not vile if Dimitri is also my best boy.
but
He's a terrible person.
So I understand there's only 4 war crimes, but he does those a lot. Can you not have multiple counts?
Yeah. If I was counting individual instances of these, the numbers would definitely be different. It comes to a point of when getting specific counts for how many times things were used, then I would have also had to consider accounts if a war crime spell or battalion was used, then every different time it was used would have to be a war crime, and that's going to differ so much from play to play. So I kind of executive decision to only count each thing once, no matter how many times those things may occur. I do, however, think that it would be very, very funny to like, for someone steal this idea because I'm not going to do it, run a Twitch stream like playthrough of Fire Emblem, where you just keep a running counter in the corner every time you do it, and that's how you can at least have that like after reliable number for your personal playthrough. I think that would be really fun.
With Sothis and Violet being becoming one before and after awakening, wouldn't that absolve like half the war crimes just because technically you are a religious figure?
Alright, that was technically half of my war crimes are Sophis' fault. You've rewritten the ending of my panel, sir. Congratulations!
Black Eagles, though, not relevant. Violet doesn't become Sophis.
I have only committed over 1,000 war crimes when I am with the Black Eagles.
Maybe answers the question of the panel.
Maybe it does. Yes.
So technically murdering medics is a war crime, but what if those medics can also set you on fire with a book?
And it doesn't make what you do less of a war crime, but it makes what the medics are doing also a war crime. So like if we're doing like Harry Potter wand spell dueling, it cancels out and your war crime gets stuck in the middle and explodes. Yes.
Well, I'm surprised the use of nuclear weapons is not considered a war crime. I thought there was some illegality in the use of nuclear weapons. And
There is
so
illegality due to the indiscriminate element of Article 8, Part 17, but it is one of those cases where, in theory, yes, any usage of a nuclear weapon would end up being a war crime if you were to use it, absolutely. However, the owning of them and the ability to, in theory, use them is not, because again, in theory, there are ways in which you could use them that would not be war crimes. Again, not really. This is basically just a lot of like weird, very elaborate legal jargon to make the United States not culpable for things the United States has done in the international political scene over the past few years. We're not going to get into the real life politics though. I was an international affairs major, and that's why this panel exists, so I have not too much, I got that. Anyway, continue.
So about the dressing up as a religious figure.
Yes.
After Violet and Sothis combine, does religious figures include God?
Is God an inherently religious figure? Okay, Dragoncon attendees, let's discuss
I feel like God would be a religious figure if people recognize that that was God. So if nobody knows that that's what God was.
So if people respect God as God, then God is a religious figure is what you're saying. But since no one knows that God lives in Bylif's head, Bylif is not innately religious unless Bylif starts purposefully like gathering the divine right of kings and or sanctifying oneself, mayhaps? Yes. I question a lot of the caveats going into the phrase willing there, basically, is where I fall on that.
I want to know, what group was your first playthrough?
My first playthrough was Blue Lions because I bought the game for Dimitri because I thought he was pretty. No, it gets worse. It gets worse, you guys. I didn't have a Switch. I bought a Switch and Fire And also, actually, no, one additional reason, and that is Ash looks identical to my first ever D&D campaign character that I played for like multiple years. Same characterization, exact same features. So it's like, they stole my boy. I want to play the game. Yes.
I'm just curious if we're into Dimitri for the same reason. Is it the eye patch?
It's the fact that he is just angrier, buffer Reinhard von Lohengram. Yeah.
How much of your life do you think went into that you won't get back time?
I watched a lot of the Great British Baking Show. I do not calculate the amount of time I spend on my panels in hours because then I would be sad, but it was from when the first episode of like season 8 to when Jurgen got eliminated and I was too sad to keep working on the panel. So that's how long the PowerPoint was. The research before that we're not going to talk about. Yes?
Not too long ago, I started doing something kind of like this. I tallied Goku's war crimes.
Good! Yes!
So, based on your system, I can confirm that nobody in Fire Emblem can beat Goku.
At least when it comes to war crimes, nobody in Fire Emblem can beat Goku. I accept this. There are the best people in my students. Over there. Cool.
One is kind of serious, the other is a little bit not so serious. But, you know, you got violence.
Yes.
You got a god in your head.
Yeah.
Everyone else can see you crazy.
Arguably. The thing is, I'm not crazy because I keep on saying I as if I'm still Violet right now. I'm not. It's hard to make. Violet isn't crazy because the god in Violet's head is actually God. Like, Dimitri is experiencing some crazy and still doing some crimes. But Violet, it's not crazy. That's God.
Well, I mean, my
Yes.
question is, like,
Oh.
is it truly a crime for girl boss that hard?
It's not. Everyone. You see, that's the true secret of all girl bosses is that every girl boss has an even stronger god girl boss living inside. Yes.
As one violent to another, could you claim insanity? They can't see the god. Could you claim insanity to get
I
out of
feel
your
like
life?
that would be like me shooting my boyfriend in the face and saying the insanity made me do it. Ooh, I was insane all along. I don't think it would work. I think I could try, but I don't think it would work.
I'm an attorney, so I do have like some insanity things here. You do
Yes,
have to-
attorney.
You have to work pretty hard to prove an insanity defense because it is basically a get out of jail free card if you are actually insane.
Yeah,
so the God
insanity
defense
defense
is
is
a
a really
definite no
difficult
because
to do.
Violet does not perceive Violet's self as crazy. The thing, if you tried to explain it to someone else and you were like, no, I'm dead serious. God is inside my mind and tells me everything I should do. And also I hallucinated God in my bedroom for like 9 months. This is all true. Then they might be like,
Yeah, but also
about that.
Violet was never close enough with her students to talk about this. So I feel like if Violet tried to claim insanity defense while with the whole God in my head / bedroom thing, they would just be like, but Violet, like, we ate dinner with you every night. Yes.
But even if she could get out of jail free by claiming insanity, the whole point was that this was a moral thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like
God knows,
Yeah, God knows everything Violet did because God was there.